A mother German shepherd and her barely alive pup arrived at his door, desperate for help. As they fought to survive, an unexpected bond formed. But what happens when you're forced to say goodbye to those you've saved? The wind howled through the cold, quiet night, shaking the trees outside Alex Harrison's small cabin. The world around him was dark and still, the only sounds the crunching of snow under the wind and the occasional rustling of branches. Inside, Alex sat by the fire, trying to relax after a long day of rescuing animals. As an experienced animal rescuer, he had seen his share of wild creatures in pain, but tonight, something felt different. Suddenly, a loud scratching noise broke the silence. It was sharp and desperate, like something, or someone, was trying to get inside. Alex's heart skipped a beat as the sound grew louder, followed by a low, pained moan that sent a chill down his spine. The noise carried a weight, an urgency, and something deep inside Alex told him it wasn't an animal he could just ignore. His hand hovered over the door handle. He was used to wild animals, but this felt different. His fingers trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the unknown. What was out there in the storm? His mind raced, and for a moment, he wondered if he should ignore it and wait for the storm to pass. But the sound continued, growing weaker, more desperate. With a deep breath, Alex reached for the door, his instincts telling him that whatever was out there needed help. Slowly, he turned the handle, his heart pounding as the door creaked open. What he saw next would change everything. Alex stood frozen in the doorway, staring at the scene before him. A massive German shepherd stood just beyond the threshold, her fur matted with ice and blood. The poor creature was shaking, her eyes filled with an intelligence that spoke volumes. This was no wild animal ready to attack. No, this was a desperate mother seeking help. At her feet, a tiny pup lay motionless, almost completely buried in the snow. The little body was cold and stiff, barely breathing, its chest rising and falling in shallow, weak breaths. Alex's heart clenched as he watched the mother's eyes lock onto his. There was a silent plea in them, an understanding that words could never convey. She wasn't here for a fight. She was here to save her baby. The wind howled louder, biting at his skin, but Alex couldn't tear his gaze away from the pair. The mother's massive frame swayed with exhaustion, her every movement labored, yet she remained close to her pup, as though shielding it from the world. The tiny pup was in worse shape than Alex had feared. Its small body looked almost lifeless, its fur coated in a layer of ice. Alex's hands trembled as he stepped closer. His mind raced, he had no idea what had happened to them. Had they been attacked? Were they lost? But there was no time for questions. The pup was running out of time. With a deep breath, Alex crouched down slowly, making sure to move gently, not wanting to alarm the mother. The shepherd's eyes never left him, her intense stare full of silent trust. Alex reached down to touch the pup, feeling its cold little body in his hands. It was lighter than he expected, and its heart beat weakly, barely hanging on. The mother watched, her eyes never leaving her baby. There was a quiet desperation in her gaze, and in that moment, Alex knew exactly what he had to do. There was no hesitation, he had to help. With one final glance at the mother, Alex carefully scooped up the tiny pup, cradling it against his chest. "Don't worry," he whispered softly, "I'll get you both inside." The shepherd swayed on her paws, but then, slowly, she followed Alex into the cabin, stepping over the threshold with a quiet, determined grace. Inside, the warmth of the fire awaited them, but it was clear this was just the beginning of their fight for survival. Alex knew the risks. He was used to wild animals, but a mother with a pup was always unpredictable. Yet, there was something in the German shepherd's eyes that told him she wasn't here to fight. She was desperate, and she needed help. With a steady breath, Alex took a cautious step forward. The shepherd's eyes followed his every move, her gaze sharp and watchful. He could feel her fear and trust in equal measure. She was scared, but she wasn't attacking. Instead, she seemed to understand that he wasn't a threat. He lowered his voice, speaking softly to her, hoping to calm her. "It's okay, girl. I'm here to help." He slowly reached down to the pup, his hands trembling slightly as he touched its cold, stiff body. It was so light, lighter than a pup should be, and Alex's heart sank. The little one was incredibly weak, its tiny chest rising and falling in shallow, slow breaths. His first instinct was to hurry, but he knew he had to stay calm. Every movement mattered. The shepherd's eyes never left him as he gently lifted the pup into his arms. She didn't growl, didn't make a move to stop him. Instead, she simply watched, her tail low and stiff. She was exhausted, but her focus remained on her baby, as if she could feel the pup's pain and knew that Alex was their only chance. "Don't worry, little one," Alex whispered softly, carefully holding the pup close to his chest for warmth. The mother remained still, her body tense but allowing him to carry her pup into the cabin. She was hesitant, but after a few moments, she slowly followed him inside. Once inside, Alex placed the pup near the fire. He could already feel the warmth beginning to seep into its frozen little body, but it would take time. He quickly turned his attention to the shepherd, whose side bore gashes and deep cuts from what Alex assumed had been a battle. As he began to tend to her wounds, the shepherd stayed still, her gaze still locked on her pup. It was clear she wasn't fully at ease, but trust was slowly building between them. She didn't protest, didn't pull away, as Alex worked. The warmth of the cabin filled the space, but it was the quiet bond forming between Alex and the mother that would be the key to saving both of them. The night felt long and cold, and Alex knew this would be a battle for survival. His cabin, usually a place of peace, had turned into a makeshift hospital. He was working on instinct now, using everything he had learned over the years in animal rehabilitation to save both the German shepherd and her pup. The mother remained close, never leaving her pup's side. She lay beside the small bundle, her large body tense with worry, but she didn't move. Her eyes stayed focused on the pup, watching every tiny shift in its body, as if she could help it by sheer force of will. Alex could see the exhaustion in her. She was hurt, weak, and cold, but she was a mother first, and her concern for her pup was unshakable. Alex carefully worked to warm the pup by rubbing it with towels and placing it near the fire. The tiny creature was so cold, its fur stiff with ice. He could feel its little body trembling in his hands as he tried to revive it. He spoke softly to the pup as he worked, trying to calm both it and the mother. "You're going to be okay," Alex whispered, though doubt weighed heavy in his heart. He had seen many animals in trouble, but this pup was in terrible shape. He wasn't sure if it would make it, but he couldn't give up. The shepherd's eyes never left him as he worked. Occasionally, she let out a soft whimper, as if urging him to hurry. Alex kept talking to her, trying to reassure her. "I know, girl, I'm doing everything I can. Your pup will make it." Hours passed, and it felt like the room was holding its breath. Alex continued to warm the pup and check the mother's injuries, doing his best to ease her pain as well. The fire crackled in the corner, but it didn't seem to provide enough warmth for the mother or her pup. Then, just as Alex was beginning to lose hope, the pup let out a tiny sound. It was weak, barely more than a breath, but it was enough to make Alex's heart leap. The pup's tiny chest rose and fell a little more steadily now. It was still in danger, but Alex could feel a spark of hope. The shepherd's ears perked up at the sound, and she moved closer to her pup, nuzzling it gently with her nose. Alex smiled to himself. Maybe, just maybe, they had a chance. As the hours passed, the cabin grew warmer, and with it, a sense of hope began to fill the air. Alex continued to tend to the pup, his hands gently rubbing its small body, trying to bring life back into its frozen limbs. The little pup, still frail and weak, seemed to be responding to the warmth. Its tiny body twitched occasionally, and its shallow breathing grew a little steadier. It wasn't much, but it was a sign that the pup was starting to fight. The shepherd lay nearby, her eyes always fixed on her baby. She was still exhausted, her body showing the toll of the fight it had been through, but she didn't try to move away. She allowed Alex to work, her eyes softening as he gently cleaned the deep gashes on her side. It was clear that she trusted him now, understanding that he was trying to help. Alex worked carefully, not wanting to cause any more pain. The shepherd didn't flinch as he cleaned her wounds, her muscles tense but not resisting. There was a silent understanding between them, she had given him her trust, and he wouldn't betray it. He moved slowly and steadily, knowing that the shepherd needed all the care she could get. By morning, Alex checked the pup first. It was still weak, but its breathing was much stronger now. Its tiny body no longer felt as cold, and Alex could feel the faintest stir of life. The pup wasn't out of danger yet, but there was a glimmer of hope in its tiny movements. He looked over at the shepherd, who seemed to relax slightly as she watched her pup. Her wounds had started to show signs of healing as well. The bleeding had stopped, and although the cuts were still visible, they no longer seemed as deep. The shepherd's eyes, once filled with worry, now showed a bit of relief. Alex couldn't help but feel a rush of satisfaction. They were making progress. Slowly, but surely, they were both on their way to recovery. The storm outside raged on, howling through the trees and piling snow against the cabin door. Alex knew they were stuck here longer than he'd planned, but it didn't matter. Inside, he had a purpose again. The fierce wind and snow may have trapped him in the cabin, but they also gave him the time he needed to care for Luna and her pup. As the days passed, the bond between Alex, Luna, and Rex grew stronger. Alex had always been good with animals, but this situation was different. He wasn't just caring for them out of duty, he felt connected to them. The way Luna trusted him, the way Rex had slowly started to respond to his care, it reminded Alex of the joy he used to find in his work with animals. Since losing his wife, Sarah, he had lost that sense of purpose. But now, it was returning. He had something to fight for again. Rex, the little pup, was growing stronger each day. At first, it was just small signs, its breathing more even, its tiny body not as stiff as before. But then came the first real victory. Rex tried to move his legs. At first, it was a small wobble, a shaky step, but Alex couldn't help but smile. It was the first real sign that Rex was going to make it. The little pup, with his large brown eyes, was learning to stand. Alex encouraged him softly, telling him how proud he was with each small movement. Luna, too, was showing signs of improvement. Her wounds were healing, and her exhaustion was slowly fading. She still moved carefully, but the energy in her body had returned. She stood up more easily now and even ate some of the food Alex had given her. Her trust in him was clear, and Alex was determined to help her fully recover. The healing process was slow. Some days felt like they were taking a step backward, but every tiny victory, whether it was Rex's first steps or Luna's increasing energy, kept Alex going. With each passing day, the hope in Alex's heart grew stronger. He knew they weren't out of danger yet, but they were getting there. And with every day that passed, Alex felt more certain that he could save them both. After several days of care, Luna began to show signs that she was ready to return to the wild. Her wounds had healed, and her energy had returned. She was no longer the weak, exhausted animal that had stumbled into Alex's cabin. She was strong again, and her instincts were guiding her back to the wilderness where she belonged. Alex watched her closely. He knew that day would come, but now that it was here, it was harder than he had expected. He had grown attached to Luna and Rex. They weren't just animals he had helped, they had become part of his life. He had spent so many days caring for them, talking to them, helping them heal. It felt like he was about to lose a piece of himself. But Alex also knew that Luna and Rex were not pets. They weren't meant to stay in a cabin, safe from the dangers of the wild. They were wild animals, and as much as he wished they could stay with him forever, the truth was that they belonged in the wild, where they could live free. As Luna stood up, her muscles rippling with strength, she looked around the cabin one last time. Her eyes met Alex's, and for a moment, there was a quiet understanding between them. She had trusted him to help her, and now she was ready to go back to the place where she truly belonged. Rex, now strong and confident, stood beside her, his little body no longer frail and weak. He looked up at Alex with those big, brown eyes, and for a brief second, Alex saw the same trust in Rex's gaze. It was as if the pup was thanking him, acknowledging everything Alex had done for them both. With one last glance, Luna turned and began walking toward the door. Rex followed her, his step strong and steady. Alex watched them, a bittersweet mix of pride and sadness filling his chest. He had helped them survive, but now it was time for them to go. As they disappeared into the wilderness, Alex stood in the doorway, knowing they were going back to where they belonged. It was hard to say goodbye, but deep down, he knew this was the right thing for them. They had survived, and now they were free. Luna and Rex slowly made their way into the forest, disappearing into the trees. Alex stood quietly at the edge of his cabin, watching them go. It was hard to believe how much had changed in just a few days. Rex, the tiny, weak pup that had barely been able to breathe, was now strong and healthy. He walked with confidence, no longer the fragile creature Alex had found in the snow. Luna, too, was different. Her wounds had healed, and her strength had returned. She was no longer the tired, injured mother who had come to him for help. She was the wild creature she was meant to be. As Alex watched them vanish into the forest, a sense of peace washed over him. He had helped them survive, and now they were going back to their home. They were free. And in that moment, Alex realized something important. He had been healed, too. The time he had spent with Luna and Rex, the bond they had formed, had given him something he thought he had lost forever. After the tragic loss of his wife, Sarah, Alex had felt empty, as if there was nothing left for him to care for. But caring for Luna and Rex had brought him back to life in a way. They had reminded him of the beauty in helping others, of the healing power of compassion. As the days passed, Alex felt a sense of fulfillment he hadn't known in years. He had found a new purpose. He decided to establish a small wildlife rehabilitation center in honor of Luna and Rex's journey. He wanted to help other animals, just like he had helped them, and give them a chance to recover and return to the wild. Alex's life had changed in ways he hadn't expected, and he knew it was all because of the unlikely bond he had shared with Luna and Rex. Their time together had taught him that sometimes healing comes in the most unexpected ways. And now, as he worked to help other animals, Alex felt a deep sense of peace, knowing he was continuing the work that had begun with two wild animals who had shown him the power of trust, love, and letting go. Months passed, and life returned to a quieter rhythm for Alex. Luna and Rex had fully reintegrated into the wild, and Alex knew they were thriving, living as they were meant to. His wildlife rehabilitation center was growing, and he spent his days helping other animals in need. But there was always a part of him that wondered about Luna and Rex, how they were, if they were okay. One morning, as Alex was walking near the edge of his property, he heard a familiar sound. A rustling in the trees caught his attention, and his heart skipped a beat. He turned, and there they were, Luna and Rex, standing just outside the clearing. Rex, now grown and strong, stood beside his mother, his once tiny body now full of muscle and confidence. Luna was with him, still carrying the scars from their struggle, but her body was healthy, and her eyes gleamed with the wild spirit she had reclaimed. Alex stood frozen, watching them from a distance. He knew they were wild now, and they belonged to the forest, to the life they had always known. But as he looked at them, he also knew they would always be a part of him. The bond they had shared during their time together could never be broken. Luna and Rex had taught him about healing, trust, and the beauty of letting go. Rex glanced over at Alex, his dark eyes meeting Alex's for a brief moment, and Alex felt a wave of emotion wash over him. It was as if the pup was saying thank you for saving him, for giving him a chance. Luna, too, looked back at Alex, her gaze full of understanding and gratitude. After a few moments, they turned and disappeared into the trees, their forms fading into the wilderness. Alex stood there for a while, knowing that this was the last time he would see them. But it didn't feel like a goodbye. It felt like a full circle, a reminder that the love and trust they had shared would always be a part of him.